Hello everyone and welcome to another video on this 2003 Packard Bell computer. You may remember that in the previous video in this series, I found a front panel and applied it to the front of the case, making the PC look much better in my opinion. If you missed that video, I recommend checking it out if you're interested. It is linked in the top corner and the description below. Anyways, as you're probably aware, this PC runs Windows XP like it did when it was brand new. But today I want to try something stupid, and that is attempting to install my copy of Windows 7 Home Premium. This operating system was released in 2009, 6 years after this PC was manufactured, and I would love to see how well, or terribly, Windows 7 will run, along with trying to load updates and drivers. Of course, this was not a smooth journey and involved some weirdness, so I hope you enjoy. The system requirements for Windows 7 are written on the side of the box here. 1 GHz or faster processor, 1 GB of RAM, 16 GB of disk space, and DirectX 9 graphics, which, as you may be aware, is an area this PC struggles with considerably. Aside from the graphics though, this PC does in fact match most of the requirements listed on the box. It has a 1.66 GHz AMD Athlon processor and 1 GB of RAM, though it previously had 256 MB. Of course, I want to preserve the current installation of Windows XP that I have, so I'll be inserting a brand new 120GB SSD that I purchased for just £12 and installing Windows 7 on that instead. Let's turn off the PC and get the new SSD installed inside the computer. Of course, the first thing to do before working inside the computer was to unplug it from the wall. I then removed the side panels to allow me to detach the SATA to IDE adapter that was attached to the SSD inside the computer. I also made a video showing how I installed an SSD and adapter into this PC, which is linked in the corner and description if you want to see it. Anyways, with some fiddling, I managed to detach the adapter from the SSD, being very careful not to knock the circuit board against anything inside the case. Unfortunately, the power and data cables were a bit tangled in amongst other cables inside the PC, which was annoying to deal with because the cables were quite rigid. But eventually though, after unplugging the floppy drive, which I didn't need to use anyway, I was able to free the adapter from the mess of tangled cables. Next, I got the new SSD out of its packaging and plugged it into the SATA connector on the adapter. I then placed the SSD sideways in the bottom of the case as I didn't feel like screwing it in for now. Finally, I plugged the power cable into one of the free power connectors. And that was it. Now it was time to reattach the side panels, put the keyboard and mouse back in the right place, and plug the PC back in. After powering it on, the BIOS recognised the new SSD, which was a good start. I opened the Windows 7 box and took out the 32-bit installation DVD, since this PC has a 32-bit processor. I inserted the DVD into the drive, pressed Ctrl or Delete to restart the PC, and pressed F8 during startup to boot from the DVD drive manually. Then the Windows setup began loading files. So far so good. 1 minute later and the Windows 7 startup screen showed up, which felt both strange and cool to see on this 22-year-old computer. After it finished booting though, it got stuck at the setup background, and the DVD stopped spinning entirely. Uh-oh. I decided to leave the computer alone and see if it would eventually load. Maybe there was just something going on in the background. Eventually, after 5 minutes of waiting, the DVD suddenly started spinning again, and then the installation wizard appeared finally. I selected my language and clicked next, and then I had to wait at the starting screen for another 5 minutes, which was fun. And then the license agreement appeared. After thoroughly reading through the license terms word for word and clicking agree, I was then prompted to configure the new SSD. I made a 60GB partition to install Windows on, formatted it, and that was it. Windows 7 was now installing on this old computer. At first the process was very slow, but it started to speed up after a couple of minutes. About 15 minutes and a couple of reboots later, and the setup had reached the final stages, which were preparing the computer for first use, and checking video performance, or lack thereof. I was then prompted to enter my username, password, and product key. I chose to turn off automatic activation as I was going to let Legacy Update handle that later. Finally, Windows prompted me to turn on updates, which I chose not to for now, and then it asked me to configure the time and date settings. And finally, installation was complete. The whole process took about half an hour in the end, which in all fairness is not very long at all, and it would have taken even longer if I had a regular old hard drive in this computer. Windows started loading my user account, and moments later I was at the desktop. Of course the aeroglass effects were not working, but considering this PC's lack of graphical power and drivers likely being missing, it is understandable. Windows actually seemed quite stable and quick, likely due to the fast load times from the SSD. Even dragging Windows around the screen was quite smooth. However, it would cause the CPU to max out. Oh dear. I also noticed that the audio wasn't working as there was no startup sound upon boot up, and Windows was complaining about a missing audio device, even though the speakers were plugged in. This meant that some drivers were most likely missing. I opened Device Manager to check, and I saw that 4 drivers were not installed, including ones for audio and video. This meant that Windows was currently using the built-in standard video driver, which has no 3D acceleration whatsoever. This meant that even simple stuff like Solitaire had abysmal performance. None of the animations were playing properly. I really needed to get the video drivers working. But before doing that, I wanted to get Legacy Update installed to see if I could get Windows 7 up to date first. I went over to my main PC, which happened to be in the process of rendering a different video at the time, and I ejected the USB wireless adapter that was plugged in the back of it. I plugged the adapter into the front of the old PC, and Windows started complaining about missing drivers for the adapter. So I took the driver CD out of the box, removed the Windows 7 DVD from the drive, and inserted the driver CD. The box does say that the adapter is supposed to work with Windows 7, so hopefully I don't get any blue screens, unlike what happened with Windows XP. I ran the installation wizard and it began copying the driver files. I did go into system properties and turn off automatic restart after system failure, just in case a blue screen occurred. Thankfully though, I didn't need to worry as the drivers finished installing without any errors, and Windows then recognised the adapter was plugged in. Excellent. I then selected my home network, entered the password, configured relevant settings, and the PC was now online. Oh, I forgot home group was a thing. I just turned off file sharing as I did not need it. And now that the PC was online, I opened Internet Explorer and went on Google to ensure websites could load. And yes, Google was working fine. Can't say the same about this article I accidentally clicked on though. What a mess. I'll just blame Internet Explorer for being 16 years out of date. Anyways, I went to legacyupdate.net and downloaded the setup. This allowed me to prepare the installation of Service Pack 1, along with other necessary updates and activating Windows. I clicked install and straight away it began downloading Service Pack 1, which took nearly 20 minutes due to the extremely slow speed of USB 1.1. But once that eventually finished, it then began installing, which took another 30 minutes or so. And then Windows restarted to complete installation. Legacy Update then began configuring updates for a few minutes, and Windows restarted once again. However, this time it got stuck at a blank screen. I left it for a minute in case it was loading stuff in the background, but I noticed there was no disk activity at all. There's supposed to be an orange light flashing. The PC wasn't accepting any input from the mouse or keyboard, but there was a signal coming through on the monitor. It looked like the PC had just completely froze here. I left it for a further 5 minutes, but nothing changed. So I pressed and held the power button to turn the system off, and then I turned it back on to try booting again. Annoyingly, the exact same issue persisted. Just to be absolutely sure, I left the computer alone for at least 20 minutes. But of course, nothing changed. Something must have went horribly wrong during the update process, preventing Windows from booting. I even tried restarting the computer and pressing F8 to enter the Windows boot manager to hopefully enter safe mode, but that wouldn't work either. It would just get stuck like before. This meant I had to reinsert the Windows 7 installation DVD, wait for the setup to boot, and then try the repair your computer option. Maybe one of the tools here could help fix the boot issues. Naturally, the first thing to try was startup repair. I mean, it says it can fix problems that are preventing Windows from booting, so surely this would be the answer to our problem, right? Within 10 seconds it attempted repairs and prompted me to restart the computer. I was doubtful this even did anything considering how quick it went. If repairs are successful, Windows will start correctly. Let's reboot the computer and see if it made a difference. What's it going to do then? Is it actually, has it fixed anything, or is that just BS? Nope. The same issue persisted, of course. So I booted from the installation DVD once again, and this time tried system restore. Thankfully, Windows had created 2 restore points during the update process. I selected the first available restore point to see what programs would be affected by restoring the system. Interestingly, the only thing listed was a driver for the processor. Considering the different build numbers between the previous and updated drivers, I wouldn't be surprised if this is what caused the system to stop booting. Maybe the updated driver is not actually compatible with the AMD Athlon processor inside this PC. I let the system restore do its restoring, and after a minute it completed successfully and rebooted the system. And look at that, Windows is actually booting this time. This confirmed that the updates that were installed after Service Pack 1 were stopping the PC from booting. It even reached the desktop this time, and Windows was running stable once again. And you can see here that Service Pack 1 is still installed. Just to be sure, I did reinstall Legacy Update once again. Maybe this time the updates would install properly and not prevent the system from booting like earlier. But unfortunately the same issue persisted. It's done the same thing. So I had to run system restore to erase the updates again. This then allowed Windows to boot properly. I spent a while trying different methods of installing Legacy Update, but it seemed that no matter what options I tried, it would just keep installing the same updates that would inevitably prevent the system from booting. Yep. Same thing. I even restored Windows back to the retail version instead of Service Pack 1, but the same boot problems would have inevitably occur later. And it's done the same exact thing. Some people may wonder why I didn't just use Windows Update instead, as it's literally built into Windows 7. But you can see here it just whines about not being able to find updates. This is the reason why I even tried installing Legacy Update in the first place, to address this problem and to get Windows 7 up to date. In the end, with all the problems I kept running into, I decided to just forget about updates for now and focus on at least downloading the video and audio drivers so I could get 3D graphics and sound working. I opened Internet Explorer and downloaded Snappy Driver Installer. Once that finished, I opened the program and chose to download driver indexes, which would hopefully find all the necessary drivers that were missing. We can change theme? Oh my god, why does this have so many... What the hell? Wow. That's interesting. After a minute, it made a list of all the drivers that were either missing or needed updating. I chose to install the audio and video drivers only to save time. Or at least try to. Somehow these drivers combined were about 800 megabytes in size, which would apparently take 127 days to download. No, of course not really. After a few minutes it correctly estimated that it would take 1 hour and 40 minutes to download the drivers, which was still very slow, but again, I'll just blame the computer for having USB 1.1 ports. I left the PC alone and did other stuff in the background while it downloaded the drivers. And nearly 2 hours later, the download finally completed and the installation process began automatically. I paid close attention to the speaker icon, and momentarily it changed, indicating that the audio was now working. I turned the speakers up and... yes, the audio was working now. I just needed to wait for the video driver to install. In the meantime, I opened some sample music in Windows Media Player, which worked just fine. This is lagging though. Anyways, not long later and the video driver finished installing. Now it was time to restart Windows and see if everything still works. Well, it made it past the boot up screen, that's a good start. and upon checking the signal info on the monitor, I noticed it was running at 56 Hz, which was weird. It's supposed to be 60 Hz, but at least the video driver seemed to be working. Windows was recognizing it as the NVIDIA GeForce 2 integrated GPU with 32 MB of available memory, which was correct. There was also a new NVIDIA tab in the advanced graphics menu, but I couldn't access it for some reason, which was strange. But never mind, I chose not to worry about that and just changed the weird refresh rate from 56 Hz to 60 Hz. Changing resolutions also worked fine, which was good to see. Oh yeah, that works, and that looks nice. Not very nice on the camcorder though. I'll do 1024 by 768, that should be fine. There we go. Yeah, that's a good balance, I think. Since it was midnight at this point, I decided to turn the computer off and continue testing later. However, the next morning, when I turned the PC back on, some weird things started happening. I tried to set a screensaver, and then the screen went blank, followed by a blue screen. And the problem file was nv4mini.sys, which relates to the video driver I'd installed. Great. After restarting the computer, Windows did boot up again, but anything I tried that required graphics acceleration, whether it involved running a performance test, opening Windows Media Player, or simply just opening Solitaire, would just crash the system entirely. In short, installing the video drivers made Windows completely useless for anything other than staring at the desktop. I tried rolling the driver back, which reverted Windows back to the standard VGA driver, which was more stable but lacked 3D acceleration, meaning animations in Solitaire didn't work and neither did most of the screensavers. But at least the PC wasn't crashing though. And yes, I did attempt to reinstall the same NVIDIA video drivers, and the exact same blue screen issue persisted. So I reverted the driver back again. But it wasn't completely over yet. When I opened Snappy Driver Installer, I found that there were loads of older NVIDIA drivers that I could try out. So I decided to try the second newest one, which was version 7.2.1.4 from May 2005, instead of version 6.14.10.9371 from October 2006. Yes, the older one is a higher version. Bit confusing. But anyway, I got that installed, rebooted the computer. Again, Windows was recognizing NVIDIA GeForce 2 integrated GPU with the older 2005 driver this time. The question is though, would the PC implode if I opened Solitaire? Oh, it's working. No, it runs now, and surprisingly smooth too. Yeah, I know it's just Solitaire, but this version of Windows is 6 years newer than the PC itself, so I'd say it's kind of impressive that it's running this smooth. Of course, I have no idea how to properly play Solitaire, so I thought it was best to just move on to something else. I opened the advanced graphics options and I found that the NVIDIA tab was actually now working. Bizarrely though, it thought that I was using Windows Longhorn Service Pack 1, which refers to the codename of Windows Vista. I guess this makes sense as the video driver's from 2005, 4 years before Windows 7 was even released. Out of curiosity, I went to check if the Aeroglass theme would work, but sadly, despite the video drivers now working, it still couldn't run the Aeroglass theme due to the poor performance of the integrated graphics. Even the bubbles screensaver wasn't fully working. It's supposed to overlay the bubbles over the desktop, but just shows a blank screen instead. At least the other screensavers work alright. For the most part. Oh, and look at how high the CPU usage was when I ran Windows Media Player with the visualizer, around 80 to 90%. That just goes to show how inefficient the processor in this PC really is. Anyways, that's enough of that. Let's test an actual game now to see if 3D games can even run. Naturally, I chose Robot Wars Extreme Destruction as it is fully 3D throughout, and I love this game for how bloody stupid it is. I did have to set compatibility to Windows XP Service Pack 3 to get the installer to work properly, and after waiting a few minutes for setup to complete, the game launched and it ran identically to how it did on Windows XP on this PC, down to the lack of lighting in the TV studio intro and slow performance throughout. At the very least, the game seemed stable during testing and I didn't encounter any crashes. Oh wow, well done. What? Oh. My forks just broke off for no reason. Kilolot's just... brilliant. Okay. I saw that. Oh my. The last thing I thought about trying before ending the video was running a performance test using Windows Experience Index. This runs tests on the CPU, RAM, graphics and primary storage drive, rating each of them on a scale of 1 to 7.9. The overall score is determined by the component with the poorest performance. Immediately after starting the test, the PC slowed down to a crawl with the CPU fully maxed out. Oh dear. Well, after leaving the test running for a few minutes, it completed successfully without the PC blowing up, which was a relief. Now take a guess as to what component performed the worst. That's right, the 3D graphics. It scored a whopping 1.0. What a surprise. Yeah, this PC was never intended to be a gaming machine, so I guess it makes sense. I was surprised to see the processor score 2.6 though. I was thinking that it would also score around 1.0 considering its poor performance and lack of efficiency. And naturally the primary hard disk, or in this case the SSD, scored 6.2 as it was brand new and much faster than an ordinary hard drive. Well, I think that's a good way to end the video. I'm quite surprised that Windows 7 was able to run on this PC at all. This was just a random stupid idea that I had, and I doubt I'll really do much more with this, so for now I've just plugged the original SSD back in that contains the installation of Windows XP, which I would much rather use anyway as it's what the PC is designed to run after all. And in case any of you wanted to ask, no, I will not be attempting to run Windows 8 or even Windows 10 on this 22-year-old machine, as its processor is just so old that it doesn't even support the necessary instruction sets. It only supports SSE 1, but Windows 8 and 10 both require SSE 2, along with PAE and MX. Don't ask me what these even mean, but these are required by Windows 8 to be able to run, so I won't bother even trying it. It would just be a waste of time. I am open to suggestions for other operating systems I could try out though, so please let me know in the comments if there's any you'd like to see me try out on this computer. I have seen someone suggest Windows 98 in a previous video, and I might end up trying that in the future. But for now, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this silly experiment video, and if you want to see future videos on this old PC, please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. In the meantime, if you want to see more content, consider checking out the playlist shown on screen.